This video is about an Italian tubular cast-on method using double-pointed needles with 0 tubular rows and a jogless connection in a circle. Generally for tubular knitting I like using a magic loop method, but to knit socks I like using the double-pointed needles. I use these bamboo ones. They are not slippery, they will not fall out of the stitches, and they have a very good grip. It helps to grab the yarn, and also they just feel nice. These are some of the top-down socks I made. The stitches look rolled over without the visible cast-on row, and the edge is jogless. I will make this sample using a thick cotton yarn. It has no elasticity, but a great stitch definition, and we'll be able to see all the details. For casting on, I place my index finger under the working yarn and my thumb under the tail of yarn. I make my first stitch without the knot by twisting the yarn around my needle. First stitch is under the tail of yarn and over the working yarn. This is a knit stitch. Second stitch under the working yarn and over the tail of yarn. This is a purl stitch. Again, knit stitch under the tail of yarn and over the working yarn, and purl stitch under the working yarn and over the tail of yarn. I cast on an even number of stitches. My last stitch is a knit stitch, and turn my needle clockwise, making sure I hold the last 2 stitches to secure them. The first row I will knit in the opposite direction. I hold the yarn tail to secure until I have worked the first 2 stitches. The first stitch I will slip off purlwise. The following stitch is a knit stitch, and I'm working it from right to left. Now I can release the yarn tail, the work is secure. I bring my stitches a little bit closer to the tip of my left needle and continue my first row. Make a purl stitch in the usual classical way from right to left, and a knit stitch from right to left. This is for the first row only. All the knit stitches are worked from right to left to avoid twisting them. And the purl stitches are purled in the usual way, inserting the right needle from right to left. I continue alternating knit and purl stitches until the last stitch of the first row. I will knit this last stitch, inserting my right needle from left to right for a straight corner. Now I finished my first row after the cast on row, and I'm checking that my work is not twisted. Now I will distribute my stitches onto 4 needles. Now I check again, making sure that my work is not twisted. The cast on edge should look inside the square. Now I take my 5th needle and will connect in a circle. My first stitch is a purl stitch, and I will purl it in a usual classical way from right to left. And I tighten that first stitch to avoid a gap. The following stitch is a knit stitch, and I will knit it in a usual way from left to right. And again, a regular purl stitch from right to left, and a regular knit stitch from left to right. I will continue the rib until the changeover point. I finished working the stitches on my first needle, and I will now continue on my second needle. First stitch is a purl stitch, and I'll purl it in the usual way from right to left. And tighten to avoid baggy columns. And I will continue my rib on all 4 needles in the same way until they're connecting in a circle point. I reached my connecting inner circle point. The first stitch of my row is a purl stitch, and I will purl it again in a regular classical way from right to left, and make sure I tighten to avoid a baggy area, and continue the rib. While knitting my rib, I will make sure that I will tighten the first 2 stitches after each changeover point to avoid baggy columns. Here I knitted a few rows of my rib, and I will show you how to make this jog disappear. If you look a little bit closer, there is a half stitch to the right of the yarn tail. I will insert my tapestry needle from back to front into this half stitch and pull the yarn tail through. Then I turn my work around, and there is another half stitch to the right of the yarn tail. I insert my tapestry needle into this stitch from front to back and back to front into the next stitch, and pull my yarn tail through. And now it's finished. The jog has disappeared. And we have a nice elastic edge with rolled over stitches and a jogless connection in a circle. I hope you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next one.